Hello, friends. I'm seeing the comments, and what's happened is we're actually technically about 13 minutes early. What's happened is that StreamYard has not switched over to British summertime. So apologies for that. It was supposed to go out at 8:30. I've come in to set up and I've realized that it's telling me it's showtime. It shouldn't be showtime. Clearly they're still on GMT, not BST. I thought, like everything else, it would just naturally switch over. So apologies for that. And thank you to everybody who has stuck around, who's joined us, who's watching live, who's watching on the playback. I have literally no idea how that's happened. As you can see, we are using this background this time because I haven't got a different background to use. And also, I'm in the kitchen, so if you can hear rumbling, that's the dishwasher and the washing machine, because that was also supposed to be done by the time we went live. So here we go. Welcome, Lizzie. 2 streams. There shouldn't be 2 streams. That's also interesting. That's interesting branding. That's not how that normally looks. I think everything's changed in StreamYard. All of the logos look different. So one is a laptop one is a mobile one. Pick the one you like. The mobile one will be vertical video. The laptop one will be horizontal. Let me see if I can find my style, because this is not, I think it's lost all of the things that I normally have. How odd. How strange. Sorry about this. It seems to be, there we go. Let's put that up. Style is brand color. Let's go back to that. There we are. That's better. Goodness me, switching everything up on me. How confusing. Right. Thank you for your patience. Apologies. And welcome to everybody who has come to have a chat. We have got, as per usual, we've got some updates. We've got repatriation, decolonization news. We've got new news. We've got ding-dongs. We've got events and exhibitions. As ever, the articles we're going to be talking about are listed in the description box. They will relate to the numbers that you see on screen at the bottom of slides. I've got lots of people to thank, and I am also seeing articles coming in from the start of this month, because we are a week late. And I've also seen some stuff coming in today. So with that, that's going to be in next month's History News Live. And let me first of all do the usual thing of saying hello before we jump into the thanks. So this is all from 7:35. I apologize. Happy Monday, everybody. Hello, Lizzie. Thank you. That is not how that normally looks. I don't know what's happened, but it looks quite cute. I like it. Leona, the children are currently being put to bed. And my husband has just messaged me asking for the tablet. So I'm just going to tell him that we've already gone live. So, it's chaos here. Right. The children are good, chaotic. I have been at Hampton Court Palace for 9 days. Yesterday was my last day. So everyone this is why I sound that way, because I've been using my voice a little bit too much. And who have we got here? Hello, Jessie. Thank you so much for joining. Hello, Coco. Thank you for joining. Good. It's good to see everybody here. So did I say it started at 8 o'clock? Maybe. This is all very confusing. And clue, yes, we normally start at 8:30. We do the history after dark start at 8:15. I am at 8:30 on the last Monday of the month. So I know we're now on the first Monday of the month, but here we go. We're doing this, and I do apologise for all of the chaos. So let us jump straight in. And as of course, yes, I hope if you celebrate, I hope everybody has had a lovely Easter. I was being a Victorian detective at Hampton Court Palace, solving a terrible crime involving linked gold bunny statues. It is still running. My lovely colleague has taken over from me and will be seeing out the rest of Easter. And it's a great group doing some really fun things. So, yes, let us, without further ado, hop into the history news and start with the thank yous I'm going to start with. So, thank you for sending me articles. Yvonne, Sarah, Jessie, Elverta, Joseph, Steve, Beth, Snudpuckle, Daniella, Rebecca, Sheri, Shane, my husband, Mr. Dr. Cat, Kelly, Jenna, and Katie. I'm very, very grateful for you sending me those things. And Leona has seen pictures of me as a detective. It was great because what was also fun is that I looked very sort of Sherlock Holmes inspired. So I got to be a super nerd and people were like, oh, look, it's Sherlock Holmes. And I was like, well, actually, I think you'll find that Conan Doyle owes me a debt of gratitude. I'm clearly the inspiration because it's 1849 for us. But that work, that man will not appear in print until 1887. So I had a lovely time. It was good. It was a good time. So let me also put some comments on stage because we do enjoy that, don't we? And I believe what we do is we do it at medium size and wide. That feels about right. I think that's what we do. So there we are. That's how it normally looks, I think. Let us also take off the banner because we don't have that on normally. Let's jump in to our first update. This is not the theft that we knew about before, that we were talking about with all the kind of little ingots, etc. This is from 34 years ago. 34 years ago, a British Museum staffer stole more than 300 prints in broad daylight. And there's a new book that's out chronicling those thefts. This is a guy called Nigel Peverett, and he'd worked at the British Museum since the 1970s. But in 1992, he was caught leaving with thousands of dollars worth of prints. And so then there was all of this investigation. At the time, though, the theft went seemingly unreported. But Barnaby Phillips, while researching another book, found these records about the museum's theft from their own archives. So his thefts were recorded by the museum and an effort was made to recover stolen artworks. They have apparently recovered about 55 of the prints that he sold, and he received a suspended sentence for his crimes. It's suggested that the British Museum may have hoped that this episode would have remained undiscovered in its archives. A spokesperson for the museum says, quote, "These events occurred decades ago and the individual was caught and prosecuted at the time. Thefts will unfortunately always be a risk for every museum, and for this reason, we take safeguarding the collection incredibly seriously." I do think it's interesting. That one of the key things that certain individuals will say about the reason why the British Museum should keep its stolen loot is that it protects it better than other museums, other nations might. Well, I have questions about that. I think valid questions based upon articles and events like this. We're going to continue with thefts with museums in our next update. This one, though, is due to conflict. Museums are being looted in Sudan as the conflict rages. A statue of a Nubian god is apparently standing alone inside of Sudan's National Museum. It's one of the few survivors of systematic looting. In the exhibition hall's display cases, they are now standing empty. They've been stripped of lightweight, high-value content because of a period of occupation by the Rapid Support Forces. This started in April 15th, 2023, and it's been going on until early last year. And it is believed that more than 60% of the museum's holdings have been looted. These include gold, jewelry, all sorts of things from various civilizations and communities from a variety of spans of history. The preliminary losses are across the culture, antiquities, and tourism section during the war are thought to stand at $110 million. That is the estimate given from Sudan's Minister of Culture and Information. This is, though, only part of the irreversible damage inflicted upon the repositories of African history. As to where these items are, of course, we're too close on the ground, I think, to know for sure. Some of them will have been sold into overseas markets. The nefarious collectors that people like the DAs in New York have been dealing with over the last years that we've been talking about. This is all ramping back up again, these conflict treasures. Leona suggests the stolen loot will appear in museums around the world. Possibly. I think that is perhaps, sadly, weirdly, less likely. Simply because with the conversations that are going on, museums are going to be far more concerned about the provenance of items they are now taking in, which means, of course, it goes into the hands and houses of private collectors, or as lots of these do appear to be precious metals, they get melted down. They get melted down and sold on as gold bar or silver bar. And that makes them, if they're melted down, they are, of course, going to be impossible to find because they won't exist anymore. And if they're in the hands of private collectors, we are looking at decades, centuries for them to reappear, at which point the provenance will become potentially more confused and concerning. So we can watch on. I think that, especially considering the almost perpetual conflict that happens at some corner in the world at all times, we probably do globally as a collection of people who care about the heritage of our own nations, but also of other nations. We probably do need to set up a plan for other states to potentially intervene on behalf of our heritage in a way that can be holistic and repatriated promptly. But we need to have those conversations, because if any nation believes they're immune to this happening to them, that is ego in the highest degree. Civil wars can happen anywhere, and cultural treasures, particularly in a world where meaning, sense, identity, national identity are in many cases at the root of the conflicts that are breaking out. With that in mind, the stuff that we care about right now is the stuff that will be destroyed. It will be the first to go. So I think we do need to have those conversations popping up. Jessie says not just civil wars. The previous story proves that. Yeah, I think we need to potentially think more globally about the way in which we protect heritage. I think we need to have conversations about, as a species, how we protect and preserve the historical story of us. And that by no means is me insinuating that it doesn't matter where objects are held. I think that is also part of their preservation. I think I've made that fairly clear. Steve says wars destroy the heritage, and usually the attackers do not care what happens. Yeah, I think that's the case. I suppose that's why there needs to be a potential, a larger oversight, if possible. I don't know how it works. I'm sort of spitballing. I don't really know how it works. Better says, who actually has authority to claim indigenous artifacts or sacred objects? Well, that's a question that is being discussed there, and conversations about potentially, the communities from which those items originated, or neighboring communities that have similar cultural connections. Those are conversations that need to happen. This is I don't know how I feel about this. So the Mutter Museum has come under fire and is controversial because of its displays of, well, let's call it what it is, human remains, medical oddities, specimens, etc. And they have been in consultation to make it less concerning, less ethically icky, for want of a better word. I don't know if this is the way to go. It still somewhat gives me the ick, but I'm going to tell you what they're going down, what route they're going down. So the project they've started is called the Post-Mortem Project, and it's focused on ethical questions around displaying human remains which were collected by doctors more than a century ago. Of course, other museums are grappling with this same issue. From these conversations, they have a few takeaways. People say they want the museum to be more transparent about how things got there. They want it to continue its mission to educate people and satisfy their curiosity. Okay. And they also want to focus on the human aspects of the collection. So they're going to start from the place of these are human beings, and they want to connect with the human side of the story. So that is, she says that this is how they also see the collection. They're going to do additional research, tell the stories of people whose remains are represented in the collection. So one of the most high-profile artifact is a 2.4 meter long megacolon. Apparently, the organ's owner was a Philadelphia man named Joseph Williams, who died of stomach issues in the 1890s. So they're switching from reading from the physician's note, the physician's perspective, and they're trying to read it against the patient notes of the samples and remains you are seeing. Look, I think this still doesn't do it for me. This is still, I think that unless you can tell me that the individual whose perspective you're now giving me categorically wanted to be displayed in the manner you are displaying them to me, I still have a problem with it. But and you know what? That's fine. So maybe that is, if I'm over there, maybe that's where I don't spend my money. I find it concerning. I find the display of human remains for the purpose of curiosity, as Jessie calls it, morbid curiosity. And Leona, yep, you're right. People are always fascinated by the dead, and venomous Care Bear, they can give provenance. I don't know. I don't know the actual, apart from curiosity, I don't know the benefit it serves. Coco Creates said quite rightly, disabled people are not just medical oddities, we're still people, and you should gain consent before putting bits of us on display. Exactly. And here's the thing, it's about education. But if I go pootling in to the Mutter Museum and I see somebody with a specimen that shows somebody's who in life had a physical difference or had a life-limiting condition or whatever, me looking at that and go, oh, that's fascinating. I'm very interested by that. What does that help? What does that help? Specialists, yeah. People researching, yeah. I don't know the reason for displaying it. That's what I don't know. Revav, the original display was anonymized medical. I believe so. I've never seen it, but now they're going to give someone's colon erector a name, date of birth, death, even background. Yeah, see, that's the other thing. Like, making it personal in that way, isn't that in some ways more prurient? This doesn't do it for me. This is not the one for me. Leona says, what if you went to see it and found it's a family race you didn't know passed? Look, I don't know how recent these remains are, but I mean, yeah. What if you went to see it and you saw this was somebody related to you? What if? I don't know. I don't know. Coco says there's a difference between using remains for medical research by doctors and then just letting anyone turn up to poke and prod. I agree. Look, I'm being completely honest. Was there a time in my life where I would have given anything to go into what the kind of the old police museum? I think it's called the Black Museum. Would I have given anything to go in and like poke around in those crime things and like, you know, take pictures and share them on Instagram and whatever I was allowed to do? Yeah, I would have. Now though, I would actually like to get into conversation with the curators of that for a very different purpose. Now I would like to go and have a conversation about the ethics of display, who it's for, because I mean, my understanding is predominantly they only show it to police officers from around the world. So yeah, I would still like to have that conversation. I would still like to go there, but my interest now has completely changed, and the things that I would show has also completely altered. Another update. We talked about this ages ago, but I remember it because I remember seeing this sort of what looked to me like a Tiffany blue box. These are snuff boxes, and they are associated with 18th century monarchs that were stolen, and they were stolen in a heist. And now they are back on public display. And as you can see, there's been some damage done to them, but they are looking very fine once again. So this is November 2024. These went missing. Sorry, the what I have saved is very, very blurry. Thieves made away with these boxes. They had been on display in Paris. 2 of the boxes have now been recovered and are back on view at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. As you can see, there'd clearly been some scraping done to them, presumably to get off the precious stones and metals as best they could. And I'm hoping that they have been fixed up in some way, shape, or form. It's unclear. Or they may just be being displayed as is if they haven't been able to reconfigure them in a way that would be visible. But yes, so they have been located and then are now on display. So if anybody has been to the V&A and seen them, please do let me know how they're looking. Are they looking like they're looking in these first pictures, or are they still looking the way they're looking here? Do let us know. This is also wild. I'm going to be so for real with you. When I saw this, I quintuple checked that this was not an April Fool. I am astounded. This has actually surprised me. So there is a conversation going on about the potential of charging tourists to enter national museums in England. For the avoidance of confusion, that does include the British Museum. So theoretically, that would mean that somebody who comes from, I don't know, let's say Greece, for example, let's say they live in Athens, they would potentially, as well as paying the incredibly expensive tickets to come over here and stay in the very expensive hotels that we have, we are one of the most expensive cities on earth. You are then going to ask those people from their country whose items we have looted, you're then going to ask them to pay extra for the privilege of seeing their own Parthenon sculptures. Cool. Interesting. Elizabeth has asked, is anyone getting video ads during this live stream? I think they only come up in playback. I'm not getting ads. Chloe says, I haven't before, but I have. Do you know what? Something has gone on. There's a lot different about StreamYard. Apologies. How do I fix that? I don't know where to fix that. Settings? No. I'm gonna have to tinker with frequent ads. That's not good. Okay. Right. Apologies. Oh, YouTube is doing it. Live videos having ad breaks in the middle of them. That's annoying. Okay. Are they dismissible? I hope so. Steve said Dr. Clark had. Do you know if Dr. Clark also uses StreamYard? It's all different. It wasn't different this morning. It all looks different. All of my stuff is different, and it told me I was supposed to be on an hour earlier than I was planning to. I'm very confused. Oh Lord. Right. Anyway, let's rant about the British Museum being money hungry. I can't not the British Museum, but they are ones who would benefit. Look, yeah, I mean, I know that Egypt does have a discount for locals, and guess what? The Tower of London, if you live in Tower Hamlets, you get a discounted price. That's cool. That's fine. If you've got a free national museum, particularly a free national museum where some of the big calling points are, for example, the Parthenon sculptures, the Benin bronzes, the Rosetta Stone. If that is your calling card, you don't get to charge everybody. Fine, if that's what you want to do. You don't get to charge visitors. I'm sorry, you don't get to charge visitors for that. Yeah, I find it makes me very uncomfortable that somebody who is, still for example, somebody who's still working as a craftsman, creating the modern Benin bronzes, because that is still an active craft that's going on. But of course, those craftspeople don't get to be in the room with their objects. Well, increasingly they will, because they're being repatriated by lots of places, because we have such a huge cache of them in the British Museum. So the notion that they would, on top of all the rest of the money, have to then pay to come and see the stuff we stole? Nope. And yeah, I know, Steve, I know that prisons get into the Louvre for free. Do you know what? Fine. In the same way, I think it's kind of fine that people from Tower Hamlets get a discounted rate to go into the Tower of London. In the same way that I think it's fine that the people who paid council tax in Brighton and Hove get a discounted ticket to go into the pavilion. Also, in this country, there are lots of museums. Historical Palaces is certainly one of them, where if it's a paid site, if you are on Universal Credit, or indeed there are other sort of schemes, but I know Universal Credit is one. If you are part of that scheme, you can get tickets for £1. Good, fine, perfect. And I can be totally fine with that, but also be like, the thought that our government could put in place a situation whereby the British Museum charges an extra fee for a Greek person to see the Parthenon sculptures is wild work for me. Wild work. Yorkie Grit. How they fill people out? Everyone show proof of citizenship, perhaps. Horrible. Yeah. So what, have I got to bring my passport to enter a museum? Are you going to scan it at the door? That feels weird. That feels weird. Not sure about that. An excellent question. Coco points out, if you are disabled and need a carer, many places offer a free or discounted carer tickets. They absolutely will. It's definitely worth looking out for. There are great things that are available. And also more and more museums, fortunately, are being very explicit about their access, availability, and what they can offer, as they should. Mona says, does that count? Does that count for anybody in benefits culture pass? I don't. I know it works for universal credit, and some others. I don't know the full list, but it is, I believe, on the HRP website in their FAQs, maybe, or in their beneath their sort of in the small print underneath their ticket sales. It's very clearly laid out which ones are which and how it works. So yeah, I don't want to say the wrong thing and get people's hopes up when I shouldn't. Venomous Care Bear. To be fair, all the SGOs here, you talk, Dr. Cat, there's no mistaking that accent. Look, fact. And I think if I wasn't already a member of the Historical Palaces and also a member of somebody who works there, I think that I could be able to walk up and be like, I come from Tower Hamlets, and they should be able to go, well, near enough. I'm not from Tower Hamlets. I'm from North London originally, but I feel that the East London has permeated my bones in such a way. Repatriations now. We have got US Customs and Border Protection officers have found 4,000-year-old Bronze Age swords that are linked to Iran's Talysh Mountains. So this was found at the port of Philadelphia. They're intercepting a shipment of Bronze Age swords and arrowheads thought to date back 4,000 years. This was a shipment that arrived aboard an express delivery flight from the UAE. The cargo was declared as metal decoration articles, and it was being sent to an address in Jacksonville, Florida. They are believed to originate from an area near the Talysh Mountains, which is northeastern Iran. It's an incredible cache of stuff. During the late Bronze Age, people in the communities in this region were part of a dynamic network of trade and cultural exchange that connected Mesopotamia, what is that? Why it's so blurry? And Central Asia, the Caucasus and Central Asia. The word is so blurry, I can't see what it's actually saying. There have been excavations over the past century that have found burial mounds, fortified settlements, and evidence of complex societies and social hierarchies. It's believed that this Bronze Age population relied on mixed economies that included agriculture, animal husbandry, and regional trade. It's thought, though, that there have been illicit excavations, which I think is a polite word for saying they've looted the dig sites. There are, of course, laws that maintain and protect cultural property, and that includes national ownership of statues and export controls on artifacts. So these arrowheads are going to remain in the custody of the Customs and Border Protection, which presumably gets a lot stickier considering the situation between Iran and America currently. I'm assuming. So it's been seized in Philadelphia, and they are holding on to it until the final legal disposition is determined. And I am assuming that that's going to be determined in a court in Philadelphia. They obviously are going to have to try and find the people responsible for trying to import it, etc. But yeah, we're going to see what happens with this, pals, because Coco, like you, I am wondering how current events are going to impact the artifacts and where they go. I have questions about that. T-Dust and the client in Florida knew what they were buying / stealing. Of course they did. And it's being routed through the UAE. I don't think that's the first time that we have seen connections with museums out in the UAE and auction individuals out connected with the UAE who have been involved in smuggling. This is not new, I believe. Next, repatriation. A vast scale of overseas human remains that are held in UK museums have been decried by MPs and experts. There is a study that's been done by The Guardian that points to the fact that UK museums hold more than 260,000 items of remains, often in a sacrilegious way. The UK institutions with the most non-European remains are as follows: the Natural History Museum, the University of Cambridge, unsurprisingly the British Museum, I'm surprised they're not higher up, to be honest, the University of Oxford, the Science Museum, the University of Edinburgh, National Museums of Liverpool, National Museums of Scotland, University of Glasgow, and University College London. These remains were, for the most part, brought in, captured, created, dug up, stolen, however they came into collections. They were, I think, in almost every case, I don't know every single artifact, an item that's in there, but in almost every case, these crimes were perpetrated in lands that were being colonized or being scouted for the colonial project. And these remains were part of in heavy quotes, scientific attempt to investigate and categorize human beings as being different on the basis of race. This is these remains in many cases are in museums, and they got here because they were designed to prop up a system that classified by skin color. Of the items known to originate outside of Europe, the vast majority, so over nearly 12,000 remains, human remains, were found to have come from Africa, 9,500 from Asia, just over 3,000 from Oceania, just over 2,000 from North America, and nearly 2,000 from South America. The Natural History Museum has the largest collections of remains from Asia and North and South America. There are 241 museums, universities, and council that hold human remains, whereas but only 100 disclose an exact or estimated number of individuals represented in their collections, that totaling around 79,334 people. Some institutions say they held several cardboard boxes of human remains, but knew neither the number nor the provenance of these items. The Lord Paul Botang said the findings exposed UK museums and universities as, quote, imperial charnel houses, where the bones of Indigenous people torn from Britain's empire in the past, with little to no regard to the spiritual sensibilities of its people, continue to be retained to this day in circumstances that beg a belief. The chair of the All-Parliamentary Group for African Reparations said that it was barbaric that looted and human remains were warehoused in boxes. Quote, that our country allows such a large collection of human remains to be taken from other places and keep no record of them points to some sort of crime. The way that these remains are stored and displayed shows a complete lack of respect. They are denied dignity even in death. This is a great shame for our nation. Dan Hicks, who is a professor of contemporary archaeology at the University of Oxford, said that many museum collections include bodies and body parts looted from cemeteries and battlefields by British colonial fighters and officials, then brought to the UK as macabre trophies or for use in racial pseudoscience such as eugenics. It's suggested that museums should also have a policy to compile and make public an inventory of their holdings of human remains. The Botang, who's a former Labour cabinet minister, said the vast scale of the collection of human remains in the UK was, quote, frankly sacrilegious and deeply spiritually offensive. He called upon DCMS to create, so that's the Department for Culture, Media and Sports, to create a national register of human remains and issue mandatory guidelines for their timely return wherever possible to their countries and people of origins. The DCMS and the University of Cambridge have, though, declined to comment. So, that's where we are. We'll keep looking at this. We'll see how this conversation proceeds. We have a repatriation happening. Something is leaving the Smithsonian. A Smithsonian museum exhibit about slave ships, about the enslavement of African people, and the trips across the Atlantic. Has been on display. Let me just find where we are here. I'm going to, because this is very blurry, so I'm going to put it up bigger so I can see what is going on properly. Pardon me. Okay. Let's make that bigger because I need glasses. So the National Museum of African American History and Culture says a timber piece from a slave ship, the Sao Jose Paquete de Africa, which was on display is on display in its Slavery and Freedom exhibit, is going to be prepared for a trip back to its home museum in South Africa. A 33-pound or 15-kilogram timber piece has been prominently displayed, seemingly suspended over a dark void, a ballast at its side, as part of a loan agreement to the museum since its opening in 2016. This agreement was initially 5 years and then was extended by another 5. The ship remnant will be among several items sent back to the Museum of South Africa later this year. Because of its delicate nature, a special crate is being built for its transport. The alteration to the exhibit comes at a time when there are many changes being made because of the current administration in the US. Displays, exhibits, and programming of several Smithsonian museums are under review as part of an executive order that was signed in March 2025. The review being titled Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. And the National Museum of African American History and Culture is one of the institutions that is named in the order. The museum's deputy director told the AP, the Associated Press, that the exhibit's change is entirely related to the loan agreement, but understood the timing might raise questions. So I put this in repatriations, even though it is a loan return, because I think it actually sits within the wider thing of this topic, which is repatriations and decolonization. And in some ways, in some ways occupies a weird liminal space, because obviously we celebrate when items go back where they belong, and we're being told this is not about any executive orders that are being made, but weakening the historical narrative of enslavement at this current time with this current administration does feel somewhat dicey to me. Morna says, some good news out of the US culture and history. The courts just told Trump he can't defund PBS on a whim. Yes, there are a lot of changes. There are a lot of changes that are going on. I saw some things about signage in the national parks as well, altering in reflection to things like climate change and all of those sorts of things. So we have got, we'll move on to another repatriation now. And I'm going to also make this bigger because I am going to go to an optician. I promise I'm going to go to an optician and I'm going to get some lenses that are non-glare, and I'm going to be a grown-up about it. I promise. That's the next thing that's going to happen. So after almost 130 years in England, an Aboriginal man has been reburied on country. This is a secret location to the north of Sydney. This man was removed from his grave in the late 1890s, and he's now been reburied with a ceremony of clapsticks and smoke. He is now affectionately referred to as Uncle by those who have accompanied him back to his country after almost 130 years stored in a British museum. It doesn't say the British Museum, it says a British museum. So this is actually, because it's not the British Museum, it's the Pitt Rivers Museum in the University of Oxford, which, if I'm correct, we talked about him just a moment ago. Dan Hicks, he was quoted as talking about human remains in one of the previous articles. Dan Hicks is connected to Pitt Rivers through the University of Oxford as well. So this is part of his oversight, is my understanding. So this resting place is going to be maintained by the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Lands Council and the New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife. In 2023, the Pitt Rivers Museum, where Uncle was kept, committed to the return of the remains of 11 ancestors to representatives of the respective Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and the Australian government. The museum described acquiring ancestral remains as, quote, part of a problematic history of archaeology and anthropology that caused much hurt. The museum director, Laura van Broekhoven, at the time, thanked Indigenous people's leadership in the partnership. Quote, we are pleased that the ancestors are finally able to return home. We're grateful to join this Indigenous-led project that works towards healing. So, good news there. Good news there. France has returned a sacred talking drum looted from the Côte d'Ivoire, or Ivory Coast, over 100 years ago. It was looted by French colonial authorities, and it has been returned in one of the most significant, what's been referred to as one of the most significant cultural restitutions to a former French colony in years. It's what incredible item. So talking drums are described as hourglass-shaped pressure drums designed to mimic the tone, pitch, and rhythm of human speech. This is a 4 meter, 430 kilogram item, and it's also viewed as a symbol of resistance. Before and during the colonial period, it was used to send messages over several miles, announcing things like deaths and celebrations. Sorry, pardon me. In some cases, it was used to alert people about coming danger. So Emmanuel Macron promised to return the drum in 2021, but it's taken 4 years of discussions and lobbying by the French Parliament to ratify and approve the decision. But now, of course, it has been. So we see at this bottom picture here the ceremony taking place. What an incredible item this is as well. Brilliant. So a forklift operator rolled the wooden crate holding the drum from the aircraft, and a cultural troupe broke into traditional dance. There's another ceremony expected to herald the permanent installation of the drum in the museum on the Côte d'Ivoire, that's thought to be happening later in April. And there's plans for potentially more stuff, more items to be repatriated along similar lines. Things are being investigated along that route. A Czech reliquary, that's a hard word for me to say, has been found in Ireland. It was stolen from a church in the Czech Republic 30 years ago, and it's just been recovered in Ireland. We are told in the article that churches in parts of the Czech Republic were frequent targets of theft in the 1990s. Now, though, we're decades on, and the treasures are making their way back. So this has come to the attention of Interpol, and there has been correspondence about the reliquaries from Interpol, and they were found on sale in an Irish auction. So a reliquary contains sacred relics, so things that are connected to a saint. They might be personal possessions or body parts. The Gardaí have said that there's no criminal investigation because the person who bought the items in Europe and then brought them back to Ireland did so in good faith. The auctioneers also thought that the sales were legitimate. The owner collected items like this as a hobby, and last year the items found in the house and put up for auction, and that's when they were spotted and Interpol got involved. These are two gilt wooden reliquaries, and they would have stood either side of an altar in a church. They have got relics from a variety of different saints, pieces of cloth or bone held within a glass structure in the center of it. They are in the conservation studio at the National Museum of Ireland until they can be returned, and apparently that process is underway. They are going through a mutual assistance legal request to repatriate the items to the Czech Republic. So that's going to be going back shortly, we hope. Nine antiquities that were stolen from Archaeological Museum of Argos are being returned to Greece. Greece's Culture Minister, Lina Mendoni, received 9 ancient vessels that are being returned to Greece in a ceremony in the Museum of Fine Arts of Budapest that was also attended by Hungary's Deputy Minister of Innovation. The Ministry of Culture said the return of 9 ancient vessels was a new and significant step in a long-standing case of antiquities trafficking, highlighting Greece's continuous and consistent effort to protect and repatriate its cultural assets to their place of origin. These are beautiful items. They have been stolen from an archaeological museum of Argos between 1970 and 1992, and they are coming back after an effort that began back in 2008. There have been negotiations that would stagnate, they would become difficult, have intensified over the last few years. And there's been a successful agreement reached that could be signed, meaning these items can return to where they belong. So that is our last repatriation stuff. We are going to head over to the new news now, and we're going to start with a fossil discovery about a goose. And when I first saw this, I thought it was those I think they're called Egyptian geese. They're the ones that they have little bandit masks on, and I love them. We have them near where I am, so I think they have that. This is like a reverse of that, but this is, from the sounds of it, far bigger. Like to the point where I had to sort of double take a bit, considering the size that they were supposed to be. So this is the history of New Zealand bird evolution is apparently up for discussion now because of this discovery. So this is a rare fossil goose, and this, while with many waterfowl species are common in the deposit there, some are rarer. This is apparently the bones included in an undescribed species the size of a small goose. This is named the St. Baffin's goose, and it's not closely related to the recently extinct giant flightless New Zealand geese or their Australian cousin, the Cape Barren ghost. This finding, alongside recent genetic research, shows the evolutionary origin of New Zealand's birds are a bit more dynamic than previously thought. The ancestors of some large birds arrived surprisingly recently, we're told, about 4 to 5 million years. An earlier theory argued that the St. Baffin's goose represented direct ancestors of the giant flightless, that's a hard word, Cynomyrenes geese, implying that this lineage has a very, very long history. But this does conflict with the genetic evidence. There's rigorous assessment that points to a later arrival. The relatively recent evolution of the giant flightless, word I can't pronounce, geese offers another striking example of rapid morphological change that can occur in a short time frame. So the goose they thought these ones were related to actually isn't, would get to 1 meter tall and 18 kilograms, making them the largest geese in the world. That is, if that goose came at me in a park, I would have a little nap and run away. Jessie asks, where is the banana for scale? I don't. This is it. The image maker of this has clearly let us all down because they didn't offer a banana for scale. This and the original birds are the size of small geese, but it's thought they were related to a bird that was 1 meter tall. That's a big boy. So yeah, the goose, which the name I can't pronounce, is 1 meter tall. It could be skinny though. It could be like a skinny, like a bantam. Tall, thin, lean, gamey. Those are all words. Those were all words. Well done, Kat. Good work. This one made me laugh. Jessie, just imagine if it laid a golden egg. Imagine if you were underneath it while it laid a golden egg. Break your face off. That's not a golden egg anybody wants. This next one, I'm apparently 5 because this made me giggle. It's going to make you giggle too. If it makes you giggle, just put a little laughing in the chat. They found a fossilized butthole. I'm 5. This is the oldest fossilized butthole. And by the way, I also do laugh at coprolites. I'm not too bold and brave to say it. I laugh at coprolites. So this is from a 290 million year old reptile. And once upon a time, it was. I'm glad I'm not the only one that's laughing. There's a butthole. A little reptile was going about its business, and according to this article, it plopped itself down in the mud before getting up and carrying on with its day. Nearly 300 million years later, that brief rest has yielded the world's earliest known fossilized imprint of reptile skin, complete with scales, and remarkably, what scientists interpret as the critter's cloaca, which is the polite word of saying bum hole, an opening for pooping, peeing, mating, and laying eggs, We are told that such soft tissue structures are extremely rare in the fossil record. Oh, they're being all grown up about it. This does offer new ideas and development of early reptiles and their skin structure. They think that this was likely a Bolosaurian, which is an early branch of the reptile lineage, living around 295 million years ago. This is when reptiles are beginning to rapidly diversify. So we see a clear impression of what appears to be belly scales, which were made of like a hard keratin that acts as armor. But this article says this, I swear, the article reads like this. It says, the real showstopper is at the base of the tail, where modified scales surround a vent-like opening, what appears to be a cloaca. That's a bumhole. Bumhole. It smashes the previous record. It smashes the previous record of a Phytosaurus butthole. They used the word butthole there, dated to around 120 million years ago. So now it represents the earliest fossil record of a bumhole. It's also got loads of like cool skin and preserved and scales. So that's really interesting, but bumhole. Excellent. I'm glad that everyone else is laughing with me. Leona said, if that's the oldest, what did they do before? Hey, look, right, here's the deal. Maybe I know something that people don't know, or maybe this is just very common knowledge. Some big moths, maybe butterflies, but certainly moths. So you know the big atlas moths that are like huge, they're like this big on your face, and they've got the big wings. Atlas moths don't have bumholes. The caterpillar eats the food, and then, is that right? Or did I have mouths? Mouths and bumholes? Either way, as moths, they don't eat. Their sole thing is breed, and so they don't eat. So essentially, they become moths, and then they just breed and die. No eating, no pooping, is my understanding. So, what do they do before bumholes? I don't know. Steve, that's the question. What came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first, the person or the bumhole? Many of the people I know are bumholes. So, there we go. There we are. Immature, but I'm not even sorry about it. A Czech man has been using this stone in his barn's foundation, and apparently has just found out that it used to be a rare Bronze Age spearhead mold. And I've got to say, I do see that it's a spearhead, but also that image, it's a bit fruity in it. It's a little bit. It's a very cool thing. I have another question. If it was in his foundations, if he's been using it in his foundations and it's now on our screen in this way, what's holding up his barn? Let's see if we can find out. This is a rectangular object dating to 1350 BCE. And this was found in 2007. He found a unique rectangular stone in the garden of his home in the southeastern Czech Republic. The object, which had long helped to support the foundations of his barn, piqued his interest. Mostly, why are you not under my barn anymore? I'm assuming. And then a local archaeologist got involved. They then identified it as something that was used to make Bronze Age weaponry. 9 inches long, made of volcanic rock. It's a casting mold, technically a matrix for a bronze spearhead, which is very, very cool. They use microscopic evidence and X-ray analysis to determine how the mold was used. So liquid bronze would have been poured into both of its halves. We've only got one here, and they were then tightened with a copper wire. So then there would be the result would be a socketed lanceolate spearhead, so a lance-shaped weapon with a hollow base. So they could put a pokey bit into it. They think that this mold belonged to the Urnfield culture, which spread across Europe in the beginning of the mid-2nd millennium BCE and derived its name from the practice of placing cremated bones in urns that they then buried. We are told that the warriors at Troy had the same equipment. Homer even writes they carried 2 spears into battle. They always kept one in reserve. When a warrior threw a spear from a distance, he lost it, so he had another one ready. Isn't that cool? Holocomification. Oh, look, a natural glory. Georgia O'Keeffe. Yes, I thought so. That's what I saw. It's like a Rorschach test for my naughty, perverted mind. I'm in a funny mood today. Yes, I am. This is what happens when I've come off the back of 9 days of fooling about and being desperately silly for children. It does not do wonders for my couth. I am decouthed. I've been uncouthed. And Steve suggests that you click on the 3D model and move it around. It's fantastic. Oh, that's fun. Thank you. I will do that later. Emery, thank you so much for the super sticker. That's very kind of you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Tiki, the 3D model will be on the linked. So if you go to number 15 in the description box and you click on, then you'll be able to get the 3D model that way. Leona, I love how this cover follows on from the last. Lol, absolutely. Coco suggests that the other half is holding the rest of his bond. Take down that bond at once. Let's go and search. Venomous, I'm not going to put that on. I am actually. My biggest question was it a flared base? Slightly, not flared enough. Not flared enough. There we go. I'm seeing people are getting loads of ads. I don't know what's going on. I'm really sorry. I mean, I don't know how to change that. I thought there were only ads on the playback. Apologies. AI has its uses. Look, at some point we're gonna have to discuss the ethics of AI. But this time it's been used to figure out how to play an ancient Roman board game. When I first saw this, I thought this was a version of Merrill's, or also known as Nine Men's Morris, which we play a lot when we're doing medieval stuff. We're always playing Merrill's, and I'm always losing at Merrill's because I don't have the patience or the forethought to be as scheming as you need to be. So this was found more than a century ago. It's a slab of limestone found in the Netherlands, but it's been determined to be a Roman board game, and they think they figured out how to play it. There's a person who researches ancient games at Leiden University. That's so cool. And this person saw the limestone in 2020, and he sort of studied it, and he wasn't sure if it was a board game. But they do point out that nearly all of the world's cultures have played board games since at least the Bronze Age. So the researchers started looking at other old European games, hoping to find something similar to the carved limestone. There are games that have similarities, so perhaps you can reconstruct the evolution of a game from a more basic ancient form to a more developed one. So they put it through a general game playing system, which is a form of AI called Ludi, and they trained it with the rules of about 100 medieval or older games from the same sort of cultural area as the stone they'd found. And Ludi then produced dozens of possible rule sets. It then played the game against itself and identified a few variants that are enjoyable for humans to play. 2 AI bots played on a digital version of the board, using more than 100 different sets of rules. They played about 1,000 rounds of each game, and they tracked game pace movements throughout. They then matched the limestone board's wear, the marks of it, to the movement patterns on the Ludi games. 9 rule sets in the database appeared consistent with the wear patterns, and they're all variants of some kind of blocking game. So 2 players moving small pieces, likely made of glass, bone, or earthenware, along the lines of the board, attempting to trap the other people's pieces in a corner, which is different to 9 men's Morris on Merrill's, because in Merrill's you're trying to get 3 in a row. But I suppose there's a trapping element involved. You can move in certain ways. They call it the Corvalum game, and it's now available to play on Ludi. So you can choose one of the 9 blocking game rules set by the researchers and then play against a bot. So they can't be sure which way the Romans played it, but this is something similar to this. So if you want to have a go at that, go over, click the link on this article and go and have a go at seeing how it's played. Shane just isn't told me. Hang on, Shane. Are there gambling ads on this? Because I went into the back end of YouTube when I started the channel, and I was very clear that I don't advertise alcohol, gambling, or smoking on this channel. Are you seeing a gambling ad on this video now? Because that is that's okay. I'm gonna have to look into this after. I'm gonna have to look into what's going on here. We're staying with Rome and possible ritual purposes. This is a much longer article, which I couldn't put all up on screen, and I suggest you go and check it out. This is a study that's been done. Ashes from Pompeii. Oh, so you call 9 men's Morris the mill or the windmill? It's interesting how games have different names in different cultures. That's so interesting. That's so interesting. Yeah. So it was Merrill's, and then it becomes 9 men's Morris, and now or in our country, but then elsewhere, the windmill. How interesting. Snudpuckle, I just saw that. It's on screen as well. Pamela, I don't control these ads, clearly, but I was supposed to be able to control the kind of content that goes out with my video. Oh, Shane. Okay, so that's still working. No on YouTube. I was very when I was very first monetized, and they talked about the kinds of ads, and I knew that limiting certain ads meant that I would potentially make less money. But I was very clear that I never wanted to advertise these certain things. So that's why I got concerned there. So incense burners, residue analysis, and domestic cult practices. The incense burners are frequently excavated at Roman sites, and they connect with domestic ritual practices. Authors here are using microscopy and spectrometry to analyze the burnt residue within 2 sensors from domestic context in Pompeii and a nearby villa. This is evidence of, they believe, of incense offerings in the Pompeian domestic cult. So that is really interesting. Have a read and see what you think. I thought it was really fascinating. This is also cool. A 2,000-year-old Phoenician coin was used as bus fare in England. Love that. But how it got here will always be a mystery. This went into a bus driver's till in England in the 1950s. The cashier, James Edwards, worked for Leeds City Transport and was gathering and counting fares for bus and trams drivers. When he found fake or foreign coins, he gave them to his grandson, Peter. They weren't coin collectors, they were fascinated by the origins and the imagery. One particular coin really intrigued him, and they researched the design and found out that it was made more than 2,000 years ago in a Phoenician settlement called Gadir, which is now known as the city of Cadiz, which is in Andalusia. This was founded by the Phoenicians, who also settled Carthage in what's now modern-day Tunisia. The front side of this bronze coin bears the visage of the god Melkart, a Phoenician god who was the chief deity of Gadir, Carthage, and Tyre. They've got the lion skin, it's wearing the lion skin headdress of Hercules. And then on the back of a coin are two bluefin tuna, likely a reference to the importance of the fishing industry. How it ended up in Leeds is unclear, but apparently it was not long after the war. So maybe it was soldiers with coins from countries they'd been sent to. It's been donated to the Leeds Museum and Galleries, and the donator said, "My grandfather would be proud to know, as I am, the coin is coming back to Leeds. However it got there will also be a mystery." Leona, that proves that bus drivers don't check their money. Yeah, I mean, certainly in London, I don't know if bus drivers can take money anymore. It's all Oyster or contactless now. You suggest it could be something that trickster God will do in a story. That is, maybe it's all a ploy. Maybe, some trickster gods in action. Interesting. There is a suggestion. A book dubbed The Work of the Angels might have been made in the Highlands. This is the Book of Kells that we're talking about. This is an illuminated manuscript depicting the four Gospels of the Christian New Testament, and it's been described as the work of angels due to the complexity of its lettering and illustrations. Its origins are, though, a mystery, but it was thought to have been made on Iona before being taken to Kells in Ireland by monks who survived a Viking attack on the Hebridean island. But there is a new project that explores the possibility that it might have been created at a monastery at Port Mahomack, which I think is northeast of where we think we are. Finds there include bone pegs for stretching vellum as it dried, and tools such as knives and pumice stones for scraping and smoothing animal hides. They also found a 1,500-litre stone-lined tank for soaking the hides nearby. £2,779 has been awarded to master craftsman Thomas Keyes to conduct experimental archaeology project later this year. He hopes to get a better understanding of the vellum workshop by reconstructing its water tank and using it to make vellum. That's so cool. That's so cool. So this is a place where it has the physical evidence, while Iona's claim was largely documentary. Dr. Helen Spence, who's the head of research at the Society of Antiquaries in Scotland, said there was other evidence to back this new claim. There are footprints of craft-working buildings found along with evidence for different stages of production, including the creation of vellum, pigments for pages, and glass stud mounts for the cover and bindings. Incredible gospel books, they believe, were definitely created there, and it's the experiment that they're funding could point to whether Book of Kells is one of those books that was created there. So lime is usually used in the production of vellum parchment, but that isn't found locally. There is a suggestion that seaweed lye may have been used instead, which is a less caustic process because bacteria grow in the solution to process the hides. Lots of manuscripts from the period, including the Book of Kells, are pockmarked, which could be evidence of bacteria eating through the hides as they were being processed. The results are going to be published online and then shared in a public lecture later this year, so late in 2026. And the Book of Kells is currently on display at Trinity College, where it's been kept since 1661. And I got sent this one, a whole heap of a lot. Victorians got the Battle of Hastings wrong. I'm not surprised. Do you know the sentence that so there are certain things that I kind of repeat when I'm teaching GCSE and A-level groups. And the one thing that I find myself repeating in almost every session is, right, friends, the more history you study, the more you are going to come to terms with and realise that the Victorians have got a lot to answer for. Whether it's shilly-shallying with the way buildings are oriented, like rebuilding them the wrong way round, whether it's putting trying to make stuff look dirtier than it was and then causing structural integrity problems, whether it's just generally renaming stuff, making up lies, pretending stuff happened, gothicifying everything. The amount of stuff we have to unpick and just make sure it's actually history and not just the Victorians made us think this is wild. So I'm not surprised that Hastings is also on that number. So the Battle of Hastings, fought 14th of October 1066, is where William the Conqueror defeats Harold Godwinson and seizes the English throne. And we currently have the Bayeux Tapestry is due to come over to London. So they're looking into things a little bit more. So Tom Licence, who is an expert in medieval history, is thinking that 19th century historians missed a pretty massive detail. He disputes the claim that Harold marched his men 200 miles from Stamford Bridge, where they had defeated the troops of Harold Hardrada, so Stamford Bridge in Yorkshire, down to Hastings to defend the country. He said instead they arrived in Hastings with a large active fleet. So the chronicle's been re-examined and it survives today in 9 manuscript editions. And he said Harold was not a reactive, exhausted commander. He was a strategist using England's naval assets to wage a coordinated defence. The idea of a heroic march is a Victorian invention that has shaped our understanding or misunderstanding of 1066 for far too long. It was not a desperate dash over land, but instead a sophisticated land-sea operation. Nothing in the Bayeux Tapestry had been found wrong in light of his findings, he said. We don't see the march. The Battle Abbey and Hastings battlefield for English heritage is overseen by a guy called Roy Porter, and he said, quote, "It's exciting to consider that Harold's response may have been far more sophisticated than previously understood, and William's awareness of this may have informed how he chose to fight." It's hoped that this might inspire people to come and see the Bayeux Tapestry while it's in London, and that's really interesting. And of course, it does make sense that you would go by sea. Very, very interesting. A 500-year-old Aztec ritual offering has been uncovered in Mexico City. 6 volcanic stone boxes found at Templo Mayor reveal a ceremony linked with Montezuma I's imperial expansion. Greenstone sculptures from Guerrero, thousands of marine shells, copal spheres, and snake-shaped pendants were part of a 500-year-old Aztec ritual offering that's been uncovered in Mexico City. This experts from the National Institute of Anthropology and History Templo Mayor project revealed that 6 volcanic stone boxes containing these offerings, 3 of them discovered in 2023, form part of a grand ceremony during the reign of Montezuma the First. He reigned from 1440 to 1469. And we've got some pictures of them. These boxes are about 50 centimeters square. 2 were found in the late 1970s. These boxes numbered 18 and 19. Another in the 1990s. And the last 3 that came up in excavations that began in 2023. They were all found in construction phase 4. These are the best preserved and most recent phase because the most recent phases were destroyed after the Spanish conquest. The offerings reflect the Aztec Empire's reach under a ruler who expanded beyond the basin of Mexico into southern and central Mexico. They are accompanied by a complex ceremony, likely involving ritual dances, copal bomb burning, music, and other elements. And this find is helping to support the hypothesis of how these ceremonies were hosted. In the kind of collection are 83 Mescala-style greenstone anthropomorphic sculptures, 43 of which were found in the most recent excavation, and they are made up of various dimensions. There were also red and white pigments added by the Aztecs as part of a ritual to illustrate the practices in which deities from defeated communities were sequestered or reinterpreted to display power. Almost all of the sculptures retain their pigments, showing how the Mexica re-signified them with attributes such as goggle-like features and fangs that are associated with Tlaloc, a rain god to whom the site is partially dedicated. The sculptures need to be protected from sunlight and humidity so that the pigments can be preserved because they are rare among surviving Mexica sculptures. There is further research going on and an exhibition of the offerings at the Templo Mayor Museum being planned. The experts are also continuing to explore. The project currently involves 5 other excavations, and they're going to be excavating in phase 4 in hopes of new findings emerging. A scholar was looking at this manuscript and recognized the inscriptions. This is a 16th century copy of an ancient astronomy treatise, and it's thought that the annotations could have been made by Galileo, particularly by a young Galileo. Experts believe this discovery could reshape the public understanding of his motivations and the beliefs that led to his world-changing scientific contributions. So a historian spotted the inscriptions while he was leafing through a 1551 copy of this text in... Let me get this bigger because, again, I can't see the words on it because I need glasses. So this is the Ptolemy's text. There was a loose page in the text that asserted that the Earth is at the center of the universe, and it contained a transcription of Psalm 145. The handwriting was reminiscent of Galileo's. An astronomer often lionized as the father of modern science. So an email was sent to some Galileo experts who quickly confirmed the hunch. The handwriting match is supported by 2 accounts of the astronomer's proclivity for praying before studying the work of Ptolemy. This was a habit that would explain the Bible verse's presence. Several annotations also closely match the language of passages written by Galileo around this time. It's now believed that the historian who located it believes these martial notes being attributed to Galileo is now a secure finding. It offers a more complete picture of how and why Galileo diverged from his geocentric roots in favour of the Copernican model. There are 2 schools of thought are fundamentally opposed. They are based upon similar mathematical and astronomical structures. And Galileo has been presented as part of a big picture, as a sort of big picture sort of guy, not interested in the nitty-gritty technical details of astronomy. However, this indicates he was also a profound connoisseur of Ptolemy's sophisticated mathematical demonstrations. There is a plan to publish these findings in the Journal for the History of Astronomy in the next few months, and the paper will include a more systematic analysis of Galileo's annotations placed in the context of previous investigations. I was going to include this in the events and exhibitions bit because it's a reopening of a house. However, I have found trouble. I've been finding it troublesome to locate the appropriate website for accessing the house. I think it may be just the grounds itself. But I am not sure. Either way, there has been a considerable amount of work done on what's being referred to as the 9 Days Queen house. This is, of course, a reference to Lady Jane Grey, who was put on the throne essentially on the orders of Edward the Sixth. This is the childhood home, and they are in ruins. £700,000 is being spent repairing and protecting Bradgate House ruins. The work started last year. The Bradgate Park Trust has announced that visitors will be allowed back to the site from the 1st of April, so we're 5 days in. They have used about 7,000 handmade bricks to stabilise the ruins so far. The scaffolding has been removed from 2 towers, which has revealed the patchwork of repairs that it will gradually blend in coming months. They've also begun work on the formal garden walls. The ruins did reopen on the 1st of April from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And while conservation work is still ongoing, the site is accessible. I assume also if you access the site, you can also help to support the site. But as I said, I'm having trouble finding where the appropriate website is for that. So if anybody has any luck, if one needs to buy tickets, unclear. Snudpuckle. So technically, yes, because the old thing is the king is dead, long live the queen. But they did hide Edward's death for a little bitty. So technically, she was queen because she was going to be queen, but she wasn't proclaimed queen, and her reign was just the 9 days. Also, of course, there's the question as if she was ever queen, because Mary would say she wasn't. So confusing. And she's on some rulers, but she's not on other rulers. I have 2 rulers. Say that 3 times fast while a little bit tipsy, which I'm not, by the way. I'm just like this. I have 2 rulers. One has Jane upon it. One does not. So that gets me angry every now and again. And Matilda doesn't feature on any. So the number of plays attributed to this. Let me try that again. The number of plays attributed to the 16th century playwright Thomas Kyd are doubling in a new edition. The second volume of the collected works of Thomas Kyd is putting forward a substantial case for his sole or part authorship in plays previously attributed to William Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe. So Kyd's traditionally accepted dramas are the Spanish tragedy, the love tragedy Solomon and Poseida, and the classical tragedy Cornelia. Now, I was in a production of Solomon and Poseida. It's wild. It's a great text. But now his canon is including the Arden of Faversham, which is now being attributed solely to Kyd and not to Shakespeare. This, in the first critical edition of Kyd's collected works since 1901, he is presented as a, quote, tragically neglected major playwright. Kyd's canon has now been expanded from 3 plays to 8. So Arden of Faversham, Fair M, The Miller's Daughter of Manchester, and parts of Henry VI, Part 1, and Edward III. This is the first time they have been presented in a critical collected play edition as Kyd's. February Jones, whose books include Shakespeare's Borrowed Feathers, a study of early modern authors who inspired Shakespeare, said, quote, Kyd is quite different from Shakespeare in several respects, particularly in terms of rhyme. He has this curious habit of breaking up his rhyme schemes. So you're reading his text, you're thinking, no, this is not rhyming. And a couple of lines later, you have a rhyming word. It's quite different to Shakespeare. Arden of Faversham sits quite firmly within kids' vocabulary that is quite distinct from Shakespeare's. Professor Sir Brian Vickers at the University of London, the general editor of the Kid Edition, said, quote, apart from Shakespeare, Marlowe has enjoyed the most publicity of all the Elizabethan dramatists, although the number of plays that he actually wrote is very small. This is partly the accident of being notorious, because he died in a terrible fight in a tavern in Deptford with a dagger thrust in his eye, which gives you a certain kudos. Whereas Kidd, who once shared a room with Marlowe, was a serious writer who just went about his business as one of the hard-working, conscientious writers who never became notorious. He deserves to have his play staged today. I will be on the lookout for some Kidd plays coming up. The Italian government has just paid nearly $35 million for a rare Caravaggio. It is apparently one of the most expensive artworks it has ever acquired. I should hope so. This is the portrait of Monsignor Maffeo Barberini. It was on display at the Palazzo Barberini in Rome as part of a loan. Now it's becoming part of the permanent collection. Created in around 1598, it had been in a private collection in Florence, but it's now going into the permanent collection of the Palazzo Barberini in Rome. This is an appropriate place for the portrait because it depicts a one-time resident, a clergyman in his 30s who would later become Pope Urban VIII. Quote, this is a work of exceptional importance. We had the objective of making an artistic masterpiece that would otherwise be destined for the art market, accessible to scholars and enthusiasts. This is the portrait by Caravaggio that everyone wanted to see for decades. Born in 1571, Caravaggio is known for his chiaroscuro, an artistic technique characterized by dramatic contrast between light and shadow. This portrait is extremely important as part of the Caravaggio collection, even more so when put in the context of the Palazzo Barberini. It is, I mean, it's an expensive painting, but my goodness, it is beautiful. I really enjoy Caravaggio's work. They say that Caravaggio is the most iconic and famous painter in the world, arguably up there, yes, which explains the $35 million price tag. It's a lot of money, but it's also affordable. It could be worth much, much more. I mean, it's phenomenal. Money well spent, I say. Money well spent. Pepys. For those of you who don't know about my feelings about Samuel Pepys, first of all, where have you been? Second of all, he makes me feel unwell. Samuel Pepys is a wrong 'un in multiple ways. Not simply for his corpse-kissing behaviour, but just generally. I like to refer to him as Creepy Pepys. And here we find him being a stinker. As we point out, his journal does become famed for vivid detail and candor, but there is research to point out that he erased and curated correspondence to conceal the fact that he had been offered an enslaved boy as a bride. Dr. Michael Edwards, who's a University of Cambridge historian, consulted hundreds of records in the Pepys Library at Magdalen College, Cambridge. He was working on his monograph, Samuel Pepys and the African Companies, the Archives of Slavery, 1660 to 1689. He points to the fact that one of the most unsettling details, which is published in the Historical Journal, concerns the offer of a human bribe to Pepys, who was then a senior naval official in the 1670s. Edwards writes how in April 1675, John Howe, a naval officer, sought to win Pepys' support in his case that he had been wrongly deprived of a ship's command of its captain. He wrote to Pepys to, quote, crave your acceptance of a small enslaved boy, which, quote, I brought home on board for your honour, hoping he is so well seasoned to endure the cold weather as to live in England. We are told that Pepys wrote back indignantly rejecting the offer. But Edwards argues this was not because of ethical concerns about slavery, but the optics of looking like a man who could be bribed. In order to protect his reputation, Edward argues that the boy's story is reduced to mentions of a gratuity or reward in parts of its archive, and so his fate disappears from the record. At this time, enslaved African boys were in demand as servants, and an offer of this kind wasn't unusual. We talk about how the fact Pepys is a kind of compulsive archive maker. He preserves so much stuff. But if you look at the language of the way he writes in these letters about this incident, he stops talking about a boy and stops talking about a person. He's not concerned about the ethics of enslavement in the way we would be. He's worried about concerns that he's been tempted. So he uses the language of reward and gratuity because those are kind of official words. He wants to show that he's acting by the book. Trying to exercise control over how people perceive him does seem to be quite important to him. We know he does take other forms of bribes. Edwards continues, the English state in this period and the crown are deeply entangled with enslavement in lots of different ways. The presence of a substantial amount of black people in London in the 17th century and all of those things are part of the story of the development of England as a global power. Pepys had so many connections within England's African trading companies as well as the Navy. This part of the story has gone mostly untold. Pepys remains gross. Remains gross. But also, the claims that he cared what people thought of him, but not enough to not, cheat on his wife, try and feel up women in church, and kiss a corpse in Westminster Abbey. All anyone ever wants to talk about is how he buried his parmesan, which sounds like I'm making a smutty joke. I'm not. I'm talking about in the Great Fire of London when he buried his parmesan to keep it safe. That's anyone's like, oh, Pete kept a diary, buried his parmesan. I'm like, yeah, but what about the rest of it? What about the rest of it? Egads. Onwards to One for All and All for One. Musketeer D'Artagnan's remains are thought to have been found beneath a Dutch church. More than 350 years after the death of the legendary French musketeer D'Artagnan, his remains may have been found under the floor of a Dutch church. The deacon of St. Peter and St. Paul Church in Maastricht helped to unearth the skeleton and is 99% certain the remains belong to Charles de Batz de Castelmore, the close aide of France's son king, Louis XIV, who was known as Count d'Artagnan. He was killed in the siege of Maastricht in 1673 and then was later immortalized in the adventure stories as one of the friends of the Three Musketeers. The deacon has told the BBC that no one dug under the floor until now, but a few tiles have been broken, so it was time to have a look. They found a wall and took out a brush to dig further. Then an archaeologist was called, and they discovered a skeleton beneath where the altar table had stood for 200 years. They were silent when they found the first bone, they claimed. They point out he was buried on sacred ground below where the altar was. They found the bullet that put an end to his life. They found a coin from 1660 in his grave, and it was from a bishop who attended the mass for Roy Soleil, the Sun King. However, the archaeologist who took part in the excavation is more cautious, saying, I'm a scientist, but my expectations are high. They are waiting for the DNA confirmation of the skeleton's identity. D'Artagnan is believed to have been hit in the throat by a musket ball as Louis XIV sought to capture Maastricht. The French army decided that it was midsummer, they would bury him locally, and the camp had been set up close to the church in what is now in the southwestern corner of Maastricht.
Although D'Artagnan was modelled on a historical figure, the Three Musketeers were fictional characters who may have been inspired by three members of an elite court who provided protection for the king and took part in military action. Mary, when I hear peeps, all I think is the accursed bird marshmallows. We don't get those in the UK. I've seen them because I don't know what they are. I assumed they were like little fidget toys because they look like the sort of thing my son gets that kind of creep me out because it's not a food. It's like a spongy toy that you squeeze it and it holds its shape for a while and then it reforms. It makes me feel unwell, and it occasionally will stick to the ceiling if he throws it hard enough. That's what I thought peeps were. I wasn't aware they were food until I saw people on television eating them, and I was like, "Oh, they aren't what I thought they were." I think someone put them into a hot drink, which I was like, "That's a toy, surely?" No, no, it's not. And Steve, I hope you feel better soon. I just saw you're leaving because you're not well. Feel better. Feel better. Snudpuckle, peeps dissolve in vinegar. What are these things? I mean, because surely they would dissolve in water if they're marshmallows. Are they marshmallows? I saw someone eating them, and they were treating them like a marshmallow a bit. They looked very dense, very very dense. A medieval knight in Spain has got a rare genetic disorder, it seems. Now, this article, just if you go and click on it, lots of human remains photographed here that I am not showing because I don't do that. So this is a discovery made in the central city of Guadalajara, and the remains are of a member of the Order of Calatrava, which is a powerful military religious order in medieval Castile. And he was found in a burial area that is associated with knights of that order. What stood out about him was that he had an unusually long and narrow skull, measuring 23 centimeters in length, but only 12 centimeters in width. Upon further analysis, it seemed clear that this individual suffered from something called craniostenosis, which is where the bones of the skull fuse prematurely during childhood. In this case, several sutures, including, I don't know where these sutures are, but if you do, enjoy, the sagittal, sacromosal, and sphenofrontal had fused early, which produced an extremely elongated skull with a cranial index of just 53%. I don't know what that means, but apparently this means the skull falls into the rare category of ultra-dolichocephaly. This is seen to be a severe condition. Nevertheless, this individual lived to between 45 and 49 years of age, which is an unusual lifespan for someone with this kind of disorder in this period. It also seems from other evidence that he was an active warrior. There are physical stress marks on the body consistent with a life of combat and horsemanship. There are muscle attachment points in the upper body that indicate repeated use of the arms, and features of the femur point to frequent use of frequent horse riding. The skeleton also bears clear signs of a violent death, with two penetrating injuries, one to the temple and another to the back of the skull, as well as a blunt force injury to the left tibia. These are very common injuries for medieval warriors who were killed in battle, and they are different from those of individuals who die in sieges. These wounds showed no sign of healing. They were inflicted when the bone was still fresh, indicating they occurred on or near the time of death. The man's skull difference would have affected his daily life. His jaw was narrow and elongated. Dental analysis shows a striking asymmetry. On one side of the mouth, teeth exhibit heavy tartar buildup but little wear, while the other side shows more wear and fewer deposit, which probably points to him chewing primarily on one side due to a discomfort and perhaps a limited jaw mobility. They say we can't prove it, but they might have been extracted. The teeth might have been extracted to enable the man to eat. They did a differential diagnosis on a variety of potential disorders, diseases, environmental factors, and genetic syndromes. The most likely diagnosis is Cruzen syndrome, a rare genetic disorder that causes craniostenosis, but typically does not affect cognitive function or life expectancy. They said this is the first time they found a case like this. They've identified the remains of infants with the condition, but never adults, even less so knights. They are cautious. They say the diagnosis does still remain tentative and they haven't done genetic testings yet, so it's not possible to confirm the condition definitively. But it does offer a glimpse into how individuals with physical differences could live and function in medieval society. Far from being excluded, this man appears to have been fully integrated into a military order, riding, fighting, and ultimately dying in battle alongside his peers. I'm reminded, I want to say it was a time team, but it might have been one of those where it was Dr. Sue Black investigating a selection of burials from the past. But there were two men who weren't brothers. I'm not sure if they were even related, but they were in a Civil War grave and they were believed to be Civil War soldiers. But they had, one had an ossified elbow, so he wouldn't have been able to straighten or bend his elbow. It would have been locked. And one had an ossified knee, so he would have had to presumably use some kind of like prosthesis at the bottom of his leg. I'm always reminded of that about and these men were very clearly part of the military. They were soldiers. Holocaust, a Sue Black one. It was fascinating. Yes, you saw it too. And it was very clear, very evident that they were part of their society, their community. They were fighting men. Equally, I think we have, as potentially it's another thing that the Victorians have done to us, the kind of the ubiquity of the workhouse, the asylum, etc. There's this notion that in the past or years ago, all people who had a physical difference, a developmental delay, they were all just locked away. As if that wasn't something that was particular and peculiar to a period of history. Because there's very clear evidence in the Tudor period, for example, of individuals with developmental delay being at court. Granted, they were there as the court fools. They were, quote, natural fools rather than artificial fools, but they were part of households. They were clothed, cared for, looked after. They did not have the freedom of movement that a human being should have, and they were given as gifts. So there is a complexity there, but they certainly weren't locked away and hidden away. That wasn't happening. Of course, there were asylums in that time too, but the systematic erasure of human beings because of physical or psychiatric difference isn't something that happens. That's not the way it's always been in history. We aren't somehow doing something new. In fact, if anything, the period of the asylum, the workhouse, the institution, that's the aberration. They are the aberration. But yeah, fascinating. Pals, this is you've got a few days for this one. A Pablo Picasso painting is being raffled. So you can try your luck by nabbing a €100, that's a $116 raffle ticket. This is in support of Alzheimer's research. They are raffling the Picasso's 1941 Head of a Woman, which is worth more than €1 million. These tickets, so the Picasso for €100 campaign is going to fund research into Alzheimer's. So if you've got €100 going spare, then crack on. Picasso's grandson, Olivier Valdemar Picasso, is the co-owner of the Pace estate, and he said his grandfather would have been pleased with the raffle. There were 120,000 tickets, a third of which are still available. The winning ticket is going to be drawn at Christie's Auction House in Paris on April the 14th. So you've got just over a week. And then after the draw, the Opera Gallery is going to receive €1 million out of the proceeds for the painting, with the remainder going to the Paris-based Alzheimer's Research Association. So if this is something you're into, see if you can get hold of one of the tickets. See if they're already still available at the time of making this. And if you win, tell me. Let me know you've won. And if I'm allowed to share that you've won, that'll be even cooler. We are now, that's the end of our new news. We're now moving on to some ding-dongs. Some are, the first one is a very old ding-dong. That sounds dirty. No, can't think of a way to rephrase it. Let's just jump in. So we have a traveller from India graffiti his name on 5 ancient tombs in the Valley of the Kings, but he did so 2,000 years ago. So here's my question. Obviously, graffitiing on the Valley of the Kings, massive no-no. However, 2,000 years ago, knowing that Biff was here from India, his name's not Biff, I just made that up, that then becomes part of the history. So, does he ding-dong? Up to you to decide. He did graffiti on the Valley of the Kings, so maybe, I mean, he's definitely ding-dong adjacent is what I'm going to say. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. Let's see what we've got here. I'm just going to make it bigger because, you know, we are with my eyes. 30 inscriptions written in Indian language which provide evidence that visitors from India spent time in Egypt during the 1st and 3rd century CE. And I think it's great that we know this, and we wouldn't know it if they hadn't graffitied. 2,000 years ago, a man from India named Sikai Koran scratched his name in several places inside tombs in the Valley of the King, including in the sacred burial site of pharaohs and elite, including Tutankhamun. The graffiti is written in the old Tamil languages. It appears 8 times across 5 tombs. It's surrounded by similar etchings made by several others, all of which date to between the 1st and 3rd century CE. Altogether, these 30 inscriptions written in 4 Indian languages found inside 6 tombs provide evidence that people from South Asia visited ancient Egypt. So, as well as being traders, clearly they were also acting as tourists. It seems that the reason that the Tamil graffiti in the tombs of the Valley of the King went unrecognised is essentially that no one with adequate knowledge noticed them before. Very few scholars who focus on the languages of India tend to study graffiti in Egypt, whereas Greek and Aramaic graffiti have been recognised and studied for a long time. The writings of Koran stood out to the researchers not only because there were so many, but because they were written in hard-to-reach places. So in one instance, inside the tomb of Ramses IX, his inscription is written 16 to 20 feet above the tomb's entrance. The person presenting this said during the presentation about that, "It's weird, to be frank." 16 to 20 feet above the tomb's entrance. Is he on a mate's shoulders? Or is he like freakishly tall? Or did he bring a stepladder in? Questions. He may have arrived by ship on the east coast of Egypt and there continued inland to the Valley of the Kings. Researchers are struck by how some graffiti messages appear to be in dialogue with each other. So in one tomb, writings in Sanskrit and Tamil reference other inscriptions written in Greek, suggesting some level of cross-cultural engagement. These new inscriptions, we're told, show the integration of people of Indian origin from all parts of the subcontinent into the society of Roman Egypt. This discovery makes it likely that additional Indian inscriptions or other Indian artifacts may yet be found in Italy. Yorkie Grit, I love that the graffiti tells a story. Yeah, absolutely. So look, this it's not the same. But when I was at, oh, my husband just, hang on, my husband's responded to this comment, said it was Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, who said that what makes a culture civilized is a healed, the start of civilization is signaled in a healed thigh bone. That's my husband's background. He was an anthropologist. That's where his studies were. So it was Margaret Mead wanted me to tell you that. I also love that graffiti itself tells a story, but we have to be slightly careful on this, because when I was at Hampton Court, I was stood by one of the doorways, and a very sweet lad, probably about 7 or 8, went, "Who is Padmore?" I looked around, and there's this beautifully carved, I think probably Victorian Edwardian bit of graffiti. Someone who stood there with a pocket knife they shouldn't have had. Anyway, and I said, this is somebody who didn't know how to keep their hands to themselves. And I said it that way because I didn't want this young lad thinking that was an acceptable way to behave for the heritage side, even though I don't necessarily feel that way, because the graffiti itself tells a story. Yes, the school kids at your work were scandalised about carving on a rock surface in a park here. I had to explain that it was 1.5 centuries old. So long ago, it's part of history. Kilroy was here. Yeah. I remember it. Nothing changes. No ding dong. I mean, yeah, I suppose for me, it's ding dong adjacent rather than if it was a modern person behaving this way, unquestionable ding dong though, right? Unquestionable ding dong. These ones, unquestionable ding dongs. 2 men have been charged after shattering a $200,000 mammoth tusk at a museum. Just hopping back quickly. About the high place of the graffiti. Might the two have been excavated to a lower level relatively recently? I don't know. It didn't say that in the article, but possibly. But that's quite a lot. They've dug out quite a lot. If it was like 16 foot. So what, they must have excavated 10 foot plus? That's a big lot. 2 men charged after shattering a $200,000 mammoth tusk at a museum. 2 men from California. I mean, I play the game Florida Man. Are we going to start doing California Man now? They were at an exhibit in Branson, Missouri. This is at the Ancient Ozarks Natural History Museum, which is located within Top of the Rock. I'm reading that. A popular spot offering recreation and attractions. These Mensa candidates are Brett Howard and Todd Azevedo. They, unsurprisingly, face felony property damage charges. Here's what these majestic specimens of intellect did. At first when I saw this, I was like, oh, I know what this is. This is like the Christian lot who want to put things in the Bible Museum, and they're trying to hide prehistoric animals because it disagrees with the Bible. No, these chuckleheads said that Howard climbed onto the shoulders of his mate at Viso and then tried to hang from a tusk of a woolly mammoth skeleton. Unsurprisingly, the tusk then fell to the ground and shattered. It weighed approximately 200 pounds and was valued at $200,000 US. As my husband said, those two look like they did well in school. They look like do you know what they look like? They look like every American high school film I've ever seen, where there are 2 absolute bozos who aren't good enough to be quarterback on the, I was going to say rugby, but you don't play that, American football team, but they act like they are, and they just shove kids into lockers. That's what they look like to me. That's what they look like to me. So Top of the Rock is the place, is the name of the place. The Ozark Mountain and Table Rock Lake in all its glory at Top of the Rock, resting beautifully at the highest elevation in Taney County. Is it high enough that your air is thin? Because could that be an excuse? Like, were they oxygen deprived? Is that what happened? Is it high? Is the altitude high enough? It's Jessie, not that thing. It's not Everest. They're not a base camp with a respirator. Wow. They are fools. What absolute abject fools. It doesn't stop there, pals. We've got more. More shenanigans are happening. We have got a fort here. Now, this is an ancient fort that they are worried about damage being done to. This, I don't think we're quite in the realms of I'm going to dangle off it like a spider monkey, like the last two. But this is in the Republic of Ireland. It's historic and it's protected. But scrambler bikes were ridden inside its walls. I'll be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure what a scrambler bike is, but I can just see the damage that's been done. And there is damage to the ground surface inside the fort. Scrambler bikes are powerful bikes, cause this damage. I'm not sure if these are pedal bikes or vroom vroom motorbikes. Why did I vroom vroom? I've spent a lot of time with children. I think these might be motorbikes, and it looks like people have been popping wheelies. It has been. They have pointed out that any damage can be repaired with the help of the team involved, the Office of Public Works, before the tourism season begins. The damage is believed to have been caused sometime between 1 p.m. and 2:15 on the 9th of March. Oh, sorry. 1 p.m. on the 6th of March and 2:15 on the 9th of March. So there's a 3-day sort of window. And the damage does look, they also damaged the grounds outside the fort as well. It's been designated a national monument by the Irish government. It's on a mountaintop in Northern Ireland. And the earliest evidence of a fort at the site dates between 1100 and 800 BC. The stone fort structure is thought to have been built in the 9th century AD, potentially used by a branch of the medieval O'Neill clan for inauguration and royal ceremonies. This kind of damage is incredibly disrespectful. They think they point out that these people would not have done this to the local soccer pitch, parkland, or garden. They might have done. They'd be also disrespectful to do that too. They hope that those responsible will be brought to task. In 2024, new opening hours were introduced to the fort following concern there had not been enough access to the historic site. At the time, Sinn Féin TD, a member of the Irish Parliament, Porrig McLaughlin, said there was a school of thought among historians that this was, quote, as important to Irish history as the Hill of Tara. That's the seat of the High Kings of Ireland. I mean, this is definitely deliberate. Oh, Yorkie Grit. Scramblers are those smallish off-road bikes where they plough over muddy courses and jumps. Oh. Street legal motorcycles designed to be used off-roads. They have high power and clearance. Right, okay. So they just popped wheelies all over it for some reason, just to spoil things that other people enjoy. Gross. Yeah, literal dirt bikes. I don't know really enough about these sorts of things, but you can see at the bottom of the middle column, you can see the kind of damage that's been done. Like, just how pointless. What a pointless thing to do, a pointless waste of time for everybody's time and money as well. And we're not done though. There's been some thefts. Thieves have stolen Renoir, Cézanne, and Matisse paintings in a 3-minute Italian heist. There could so many jokes about 3 minutes. I'm not going to make them because I'm a lady. This happened in a museum near the Italian city of Parma. 4 masked men entered the Magnani Rocca Foundation villa on the 22nd of March. And they made off these paintings. They were in and out in 3 minutes. Chuckle, chuckle. And they were only interrupted by the museum's alarm system that prevented them from stealing more. This institution is the latest to be subject to the heist. We had, of course, the Louvre in Paris in October. The criminals escaped by climbing over a fence, and it's estimated that the stolen paintings had a combined worth of 9 million euros, with one of the paintings, Les Poissons, alone being worth 6 million euros. It makes it one of the most significant thefts in Italy in recent years. The theft is being investigated by Italy Carabinieri and the Cultural Heritage Protection Unit of Bologna. News of the heist was only made public on Sunday. These like smash and grab things are happening a lot. They're sort of, you kind of used to think of like the old art thief as some very aesthetic, cigarillo smoking, black turtlenecked silver fox who was wit and forgery and all of this. These guys are bold and brazen, and I wonder where this sort of shift has come from. This kind of bold, brazen, smash and grab. I'm going to use a ladder to climb in. I mean, it's a similar sort of thing that happened when the Mary Queen of Scots rosaries were taken, but obviously that happened at night. But there was a kind of the break-in, very obvious, interesting. Oh, Jessie says there's an adjacent story to this theft. Apparently, some fool painted a replica of one of the paintings and dropped it off in the Museum of Modern Art's lost and found security desk. Ding, 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 on April the 1st. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. And we are in Parma, where, of course, Parmesan cheese comes from, and also Parma ham. So we're all there. The title of that is Replica of the Stolen Cézanne, shows up in MoMA's Lost and Found. Yes, less like the Thomas Crown Affair, Ocean's 11, more like hooligans. Yeah, that's it. In your mind, you're like, it's Thomas Crown Affair. Whereas now, it's like Green Street. Stand your ground and fight. Now we are jumping on to events and exhibitions. This is in Washington, and the exhibition is titled At the Vanguard. This is the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. This is the Making and Saving History at HBCUs. They are looking at collections from Clark Atlanta University, Florida A&M, Jackson State, Texas Southern, and Tuskegee. And it is going to be open until July the 19th. Through it, you can, we are told, explore stories of creativity, resilience, and legacy through rare collections of our 5 historically Black colleges and university partners. It celebrates how HBCUs preserve history and shape the future. Be where history lives. Join us at the Vanguard. Rees points out there was a theft at RAM in Exeter, pocket watches and blunderbuss in September. They did it in 3 minutes. This is the new fashion. How many of these people have been found? Is this all the same people? Are they all working together, these sort of smash and grab 3-minuters? Because they clearly, they have recognized a way to exploit something. Because to do it, I mean, in the case of the Louvre, we know the museum was open. To do it in those brief minutes, what have they noticed? How do they know what to exploit? It's very interesting. As with all things, in the description box of this, you will find at 34 a link to get tickets for the exhibition, but also if I have found it, if it's available on the website, accessibility information, if that is stuff that you need, if you need further information about access. I've seen this thing advertised as I've been pootling around back and forth. There is Ramses and the Pharaoh's Gold, the exhibition. I believe this is in partnership with the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. This is getting some interesting reviews. I have seen there are sarcophaguses on display, but I haven't seen mention of human remains. I did look. If there are human remains, then I would probably say that and potentially not have shown this. I don't believe there are human remains on display here. If I am wrong on that, I am sorry. It looks quite interesting if you are into your Egyptian history. Jessie sent me a link with the story about that fake replica at MoMA, so that'll be in for the updates for next month. Thank you, Jessie. Kensington Palace. So if you are a member of Historic Royal Palaces, then you have free access to this, but also it's part of your ticket if you go to Kensington. This is an exhibition on the last princesses of the Punjab, Sophia Duleep Singh, and the women who helped shape her. Sophia is a fascinating figure. She was the daughter of the last Sikh Maharaja of the Punjab. She was the goddaughter of Queen Victoria. She had a grace and favour property just outside of Hampton Court Palace, and she was all through the society pages. She loved going to dances. She was famous for her collection of dogs that she used to walk. She used to show dogs. She had small dogs, but also like massive, I want to say, deer hounds. She had these horses so big you could have saddled them and rode them. She loved fashion, all of this kind of stuff. And then she becomes politically aware. She takes her first trip to India and she sort of sneaks in and witnesses the Delhi Durbar. And she also sees life being lived. And so this princess of the Punjab, who had never been back home, gets an insight. She'd been sort of thoroughly anglicized, and it seems like things very much changed for her, and she started becoming more and more politically aware, and she ends up getting involved when she comes back to England with the suffrage movement. She sells suffragette newspapers outside the gates of Hampton Court Palace. Of course, her godmother, who is allowing her this grace and favour property, is profoundly anti-suffrage. Despite being Queen of England, she doesn't think women should have the right to vote. So she's sort of in this position of being at odds, and she's just a fascinating figure. I'm really looking forward to going and checking out this exhibition, seeing more about her and the women who shaped her. She does have two sisters. She's got a mum. Obviously, she's connected to Queen Victoria as well. I look forward to seeing more as well. For those who are going to be in and around Ohio, you've got until July the 5th. Cursed, the power of magic in the ancient world. This looks really cool as well. So this is people across Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and Rome have used magic for protection and also to curse. And this is an exhibition that looks at that kind of material culture. It looks fascinating. If you do I'm not going to get a chance to see this in Ohio. If you do get a chance to go and see it, let me know what you think. And yes, tell me what you think of it. It looks incredible. And last but by no means least, at the Met in New York, there is a Raphael exhibition that's going on till June 28th. Again, one I'm not going to get a chance to see. So if you do have a look at it, please let me know your thoughts, and I hope you will enjoy it if you do go. There's one more exhibition that I did find. I'm going to visit that, so I will update you on how it goes. That one's going until later in the year. I've got a couple of exhibitions that I'm lined up to take the Sproglets to. So we're going to do one in the next, maybe not this week, but in the next sort of few months, because they're on for a while. One is at Young V&A. I'm going to just, I'm going to pop out of this. So one is at the Young V&A over in Bethnal Green. They are doing an exhibition on Wallace and Gromit, or actually, I think Aardman in general. And my eldest is a massive Wallace and Gromit fan. And the other exhibition is there that looks really good to me. There's a thing on fairy tales at the British Library that's supposed to be interactive and immersive. So I think I should be checking that out as well. And if you have any top tips about exhibitions, particularly, I've got another week of half term to film with my 5-year-old. So if you have found things that your 5-year-old or 5-year-olds in your life have enjoyed that are in London or its environs, please send advice, but also help. Please tell me what to do with this child, so that he has a nice time and doesn't just keep destroying his bedroom for me to tidy up later. I hope you are having a lovely Monday and happy Easter Monday. If you celebrate, I hope if you've got your kiddies at home with you, that they are not driving you up the wall. Just one more week to go, friends, and then we get to chuck them back at the school. And I look forward to speaking to you all in the next premiere that I'll be doing on Friday. And then also things will be going, I believe, back to our regularly scheduled timings, which will be the last Monday of the month for the April History News. And hopefully by that point, I won't be quite so husky. It sounds like I work on a phone line. And I will be slightly more rested and thus a little bit less chaotic. Also, fingers crossed, I will be able to figure out how time works via this StreamYard, and also all of the changes, because all of my settings are different and it's making me very distressed. So I'm going to fix all of that for next time. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled, less chaotic, not completely unchaotic, because it's still me, but slightly less chaotic way of being. Until then, please do press all the buttons, like, subscribe, bell, hype. I'm going to figure out how ads are now working, because apparently I've seen a lot of that. I apologize. Don't know what's been going on there. Hopefully it won't interrupt the playback. There won't be just massive gaps in the playback. I don't know. They didn't come up for me, which I don't think they do anyway. So thank you, friends, for your patience with the chaos and for spending this time with me. As always, it's amazing to talk to you, and I am looking forward to the next one. For now, though, have a great rest of your Monday and an excellent rest of your week. And I hope you have a lovely time. Do take care of yourself. But for me, it's going to be a bye-bye for now. Bye.